Aaron Rodgers is all in on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you know what? I'm all in on the Aaron Rodgers Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's episode, we're going to play a little game of legit or quit with some of these mandatory mini camp talking points. We will discuss the Houston Texans, the Miami Dolphins, but we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And quite honestly, I am placing a proverbial bet on the Aaron Rodgers Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this time it's going to work. I think Pittsburgh's going to be a real, true contender this time. There's so much to like here. They have a good roster, good coaching, and Aaron Rodgers can just be a passenger rather than someone trying to drive a bad Jets organization to success. So all of the factors involved, and now Aaron Rodgers getting in there before training camp with mandatory minicamp, acquainting himself with his teammates, with the organization. I love all of it. Give me the Steelers as a true contender in the AFC this year.
Quit it. Just quit it, Tyler. Quit
Not
it.
legit. It's time to quit. Yeah.
It's so time to quit. I mean, he's already talking about in his press conference, like, I don't need to be here. It's just, but like spiritually, I want to keep playing, and that's what matters. So it's like, it's going to be a disaster. He and DK Metcalf are going to blow up in the middle of the season. He's been terrible under pressure. Even in his last MVP season in 2021, he was bad under pressure. But since then, a 44 completion percentage under pressure, just absolutely garbage. And the Steelers offensive line is fine, but it's better than the Jets. But he's not going to make a difference for this team.
Listen, I don't know if I agree with you on that one, and we will discuss, but you're talking about stuff that'll happen down the road, answers that we will have. But it's all about the first impression right now. And what was Aaron Rodgers' first impression with the Steelers? We'll throw it to Locked On Steelers for that.
There's a few things I took away. One, he actually can move a little bit under center. That was the one thing I thought okay, you can do the rollout game. You got the under center game. You got that in your back pocket. Obviously his release is legendary. He's got one of the best releases in NFL history. Just so quick. So it's like a whippy snap type release. So quick. So that stood out when you actually see it in person. In terms of the actual interview, when we talked with him, Chris, not anything like, a usual Aaron Rodgers. There was no, sometimes when he was with the Jets and with the Packers, we would see him take, kind of subtle pot shots at people. Nothing here that, he outright didn't take a shot at the Jets. Very much subdued, explaining his process, explaining, the personal issues, why now was the right time to sign. His relationship with Mike Tomlin, very clearly, very strong between those two. He reveres and respects Mike T. I think that's quite clear. And it seems like, honestly, I think when we talked to him, Chris, I did think there was some excitement in his voice. I think he is excited to play for the Steelers, and I think there's an intrigue there to come to the franchise. So those were just kind of my things. You can't take a bunch away from indie drills or an interview, but just kind of a few things that I noticed.
That really is my critical point here. We could talk about Aaron Rodgers as the player, who I agree with you. Aaron Rodgers as a player is probably not in the top half of quarterbacks in the NFL, but it's my opinion that he's better than Russell Wilson or Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett. So that's why I think there's a better chance here. But I think, I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers mode on you here. I'm going to go spiritual. All right. With the New York Jets, Rodgers was taking on a mostly terrible organization, bad ownership. The coach got fired midseason. They made some terrible hires to obviously appease Aaron Rodgers with like Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator. But Aaron Rodgers was trying to drive that situation. He was the main driver of what was going on. He can't do that in Pittsburgh. That's just not going to be the case. It's an all-time franchise, really strong head coach, strong leadership in the locker room already. So I think Aaron Rodgers can truly be just a passenger. He could just sit in the passenger seat, roll the window down, let his hair flow through the wind, and not have the responsibility of trying to carry the entire franchise on his back. And for those reasons and my general belief in the Steelers' talent and the coaching there, I do think they're going to be a better version of what they've been the last few years. And the last few years, they've made it to the playoffs. So if they're a better version of a playoff team, who knows what can happen in the AFC, and who knows if the Pittsburgh Steelers could be on top.
What's so funny is that when Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, right, everyone was like, oh, they are just a quarterback away from being a really good playoff contender, strong. Like, they have a great defense. They have the pieces.
The Steelers really are, though.
They had Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. They just need a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, right? And Aaron Rodgers, even at this age, even after an Achilles tear in his second season with the Jets, it's going to be way better than Zach Wilson, right? And yeah, sure, he was better than Zach Wilson, just like he's going to be better than Mason Rudolph and likely better than Russell Wilson. That doesn't mean anything. That you're comparing, like, yeah, he better be better than those guys, or else it's one of the worst, that you're then the worst quarterback in the league. But the Jets last year averaged 19.9 points per game. Aaron Rodgers averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. They went 5-12 as a team. Like, he didn't move the needle even slightly for that team, even though, yes, he was better than Zach Wilson. And he's not going to move the needle for this team. Even with bad quarterback play, they've been making the playoffs and getting their butts kicked in the wild card round. I mean, they have a minus 82 point differential in the playoffs over the last six playoff games. They've lost 5 of the last 6 playoff games by at least 11 points. And guess what? Rodgers has never been known to be like this clutch playoff guy, right? Especially as of late. The last time he was in the playoffs, the Packers had the number 1 seed. He got a bye. Yeah. He got to play at home. And you know what he did for that offense? Gave him a whole 10 points. And they lost to the 49ers 13-10. So that's exactly, even if they squeak into the playoffs, they're going to get murdered in the wild card round. And nothing has changed. It's a stupid signing. It's going to be a disaster. No, I'm not buying it.
And it's time to quit. Listen, I know how you feel about the Steelers. And if Rodgers has them going in the middle of the year, we will look back on this and have these conversations. Because I believe, all right, I'm a believer. And who's to say that I never count out the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've learned that lesson far too many times. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, at least gives them a chance to win a playoff game. And then who knows? If you win one, then who knows what happens after that. But with that being said, one of the teams that I don't think is going to be fighting for a playoff spot and winning a playoff game is the New England Patriots. And is it time to maybe worry about the Patriots? Today's episode is brought to you by the Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendar, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, reminders, all in one easy-to-see place. And when I say easy to see, I mean it. There is an incredible 15-inch HD screen that's going to help you stay focused. It's very easy to read for everyone in your family. And another thing that makes things very, very awesome is that you can use particular colors for different people in your house. So you look at an event, what color is it? That's who's it for. When is it? It's just so easy to use. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, we're playing a little game of legit or quit. And Michelle is already on my case telling me I need to knock it off with my Steelers optimism, but let's try this one more time. So one team that I identified early in the week as a team, hey, they need to get off to a good start. They need to have a good mini camp, was the New England Patriots. New coaching staff, young quarterback, a lot of new pieces on the offensive line. You're adding in Stephon Diggs and all the drama that he's caused early on in the offseason, which may ultimately not matter. He arrived, he's at mandatory minicamp, he's working with the team and all of that. But going past that, we're hearing reports that Drake Maye is struggling in the first mandatory minicamp, and there's pressure in the backfield, and there are overthrows, and there's a lot of just inconsistency with the operation of the offense. Things are very clunky. And I guess it's confirmation bias. I see it, and I'm thinking what I've thought all along. Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels may not be the best pairing for a young, talented quarterback like Drake Maye. Am I just confirming my own priors here, or is it legit that we may need to keep our eye on New England here?
I think it's legit. We have to keep our eye on it. I don't know if it's because of the coaching staff. I'm fine to give I think Mike Vrabel can be a very good head coach. I don't think he should have been fired from the Titans. I think he deserves another shot. Josh McDaniels, from what we've seen from him as an offensive play caller, has been really good. Now it's been with Tom Brady, so we got to see what he could do without Tom Brady. I think the biggest issue here is that, again, they're just struggling to bring in any weapons for their quarterbacks, right? Because it seems like no players want to come to New England. None of these receivers are also just wasn't good free agents this year. And then they didn't use either of their, they used their early first round pick on an offensive lineman, a left tackle, which they desperately needed, sure. And then their second round pick on a running back, which felt like a luxury pick, instead of going with wide receiver. So now you leave Drake Maye with Stephon Diggs coming off an ACL tear. Who knows when he's going to be fully ready. Matt Collins, Demario Douglas, who might be just the most just a guy wide receiver that you can name. I do like Kyle Williams, their third round pick.
Kyle Williams.
I do like him, but we'll see what that happens. It's a hard group to be like, this is what you get, Drake Maye, a guy that's really, didn't have much playing time last year. You're giving him this group. It's a hard situation to be in, but I do like Drake Maye, and I hope that it can all come together for him. But right now, it's not looking too great.
Yeah, I think Drake Maye's super talented as well. But, you mentioned the weapons. If Diggs doesn't work out and come back from the ACL, is Kyle Williams going to be ready as a rookie? He's a bit of a smaller guy, slender guy. Is he going to be ready to take the beating that he would have to be the number one wide receiver for Drake Maye? And then you look at the offensive line. Will Campbell at left tackle, high pick, but there were a lot of concerns about Will Campbell, and a lot of people thought that he needed to be a guard due to arm length. Will that matter? We will see. He's a rookie, and it's tough for rookie offensive linemen. Cole Strange at left guard, a lot of people have been wondering, hey, is he going to work out? Is this somebody that's going to pan out for us? Garrett Bradbury at center flunked out for the Minnesota Vikings. Jared Wilson, I like from Georgia, who could potentially take over, but now we're talking about another rookie. And then Morgan Moses is 34 years old. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? And who's their backup offensive tackle? Nobody that I see that I would want playing and protecting Drake Maye, Lowe or Layden Robinson or Caden Wallace. What are we talking about here? So the offensive line could be the worst offensive line in football. You add to it that the weapons aren't really significantly better, and then you add in my skepticism. Josh McDaniels had good years with the Patriots. Even Mac Jones a little bit had some good years getting stuff out of them. But what happened when he was in Vegas? And Mike Vrabel, in my opinion, should not be as involved in the offense as a Bill Belichick would have been over Josh McDaniels, and Tom Brady would have been over Josh McDaniels in those situations. So when you leave Josh McDaniels to his own devices to run an offense on his own, again, I'm incredibly skeptical, and I think our collective societal faith in Mike Vrabel may lead us to doom here.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, but I don't think it's supposed to be pretty. Yeah, I do think maybe they went for the quarterback too early. I mean, when you have the third overall pick and there is a quarterback of Drake Maye's talent, you do kind of have to take it, but they're in such a bad situation on offense with the lack of weapons, and they just really haven't been able to do anything these last couple off seasons to get people in here for him. So I not, like I said, Mike Vrabel, I think, yeah, maybe we're putting too much on him, but I also don't think they have too high of expectations, right? What could be their win total in Vegas? Like 5.5, maybe?
Yeah, I think on FanDuel it's about 5.5, maybe
Yeah.
6.5 at max. But if it were 6.5, I'd probably go with the under right now. But those are conversations obviously we'll have during the summer. Do want to mention another team that I said needed to have a good offseason, and it's the Houston Texans. Because last year when Nico Collins got hurt, CJ Stroud fell off a cliff. They've made a lot of changes, new offensive coordinator and Nick Caley. They made a lot of changes on the offensive line, trading Laramie Tunsil, signed Cam Robinson. And I'm just worried about if Nico Collins were to get hurt again, is this offense good enough to support CJ Stroud? And my guy John Hickman from Locked On Texans, he went over just how bad it was when Collins was off the field.
This is strictly talking about quarterback play. Stroud's inefficiency from a clean pocket saw a noticeable decline. His percentile ranking dropped from the 90th to the 26th percentile, and his big-time throw rate in clean pockets decreased from 4.3% to 3%. He also struggled on first and second down, sitting in the 41st percentile of passers in terms of early down passing grades compared to 73rd his rookie season. I cannot underestimate how both teams both team defenses making adjustments and missing Nico Collins for five games hurt CJ Stroud and his best attribute as a quarterback, and that's the deep ball. Once Nico Collins was off the field, then you saw teams kind of adjust to that, and that really hurt the Houston Texans offense. Stroud's year-to-year completion percentage on passes 20 yards or more down the field, 58.5% to 32.4%, and the turnover-worthy play rates, 1.4%, jumped up to nearly 8%.
Now, you could make the argument that Nico Collins is healthy, he's there, so Stroud should be great, but I just worry that if he needs that one piece, then how good is everything around him if they can't get anything going without him?
What's funny though is he needs his wide receiver one. A lot of quarterbacks need their wide receiver one, right? Like when it goes down, that's bad. But I think they've actually had a pretty solid offseason. They're trying to fix the offensive line. They've made a lot of changes there. We'll see if that works. But they got rid of a couple guys who really struggled last year in Kenyon Green and Shaq Mason, and try to upgrade them with Laken Tomlinson, and trading for Ed Ingram and drafting a tackle in the second round and adding Cam Robinson and free agency. They have tried to fix that area, right? And then also you bring up the wide receiver situation. Well, last year Stephon Diggs tore his ACL, right? Tank Dell was there for most of the year before his terrible injury, but still they were not on a good page together. But they also drafted Jaden Higgins early in the second round, and Jaden Higgins is actually very, very similar type of player to Nico Collins. So maybe that's why they did that, for that, to add more for him. They also drafted Jalen Noel in the third round. So they made upgrades there. They traded for Christian Kirk, who I think is a solid enough slot wide receiver to fill in for Tank Dell while he's out this year. And yeah, he went through all the numbers with Nico Collins on and off the field, and he's exactly correct. Also, his quarterback pressure percent just skyrocketed with Nico Collins off the field. So just him being back alone makes me a lot more confident in Stroud. And I don't think it's fair to just be like, well, if Nico Collins gets hurt, then they're hurt. They're going to be bad. It's like, well, that's a lot of teams when they lose their wide receiver one.
Yeah, and what I'm curious about, though, is can they build a good enough system and add enough talent like you're talking about? Can these players pan out that they could withstand something like that? Yes, their high-end ceiling is always going to be lower if they don't have a Nico Collins. They need Nico Collins to do anything big time in the playoffs and reach their ceiling, but can they survive without him for a couple of weeks, not just fall off the map entirely? That's what I'm curious to see, and I guess I would imagine that's why they have added a different offensive coordinator and added brand new weapons and changed up the offensive line. But with that said, we do got to talk about another team that I have my eye on, and it's the Miami Dolphins, who look like they are staring at their demise. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Look, I'm still backing the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the NBA Finals. I think they're the more talented team, whether it be the money line, the spreads, doesn't matter. That's what I'm looking for. I think SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is going to win the NBA Finals MVP, so I'm looking at the over on his points each game. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Michelle, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, playing a little game of legit or quit. And we've talked about the Steelers, the Patriots, the Texans. Me and Michelle don't see eye to eye on all of these teams, apparently, but we might see eye to eye on these last few teams. I just have a feeling here, but I want to start with the Miami Dolphins. And they're a team that I've had my eye on throughout the offseason. I don't know what they're doing. I think their time is up. Like, they can try to eke out whatever they want out of this season, but they are such a team of the past now from when people had high hopes for the Miami Dolphins. And I think one of the big problems is they have a culture issue in Miami, and we're seeing a lot of their players skipping minicamp and wanting out. And one of those guys is Jalen Ramsey, and that's something that was talked about on Locked On Dolphins.
But the question was, it was reported over the weekend, Ramsey would not be in attendance at mandatory minicamp. Is he excused or not excused? And Mike said that Ramsey's absence is excused. He was also asked about if he's frustrated with how long it's taking. I believe it was David Furonis asked the question. I try to give credit where it's due if I remember through the presser. Mike said, I don't give an expletive about what I feel. So every time Ramsey's coming up, Mike's not really dishing and playing a lot of ball, but we did get the revelation that Jalen Ramsey is not going to be facing fines, which I think everybody's got a different opinion of it. But if the two sides agree to a trade and that this was going to move on, it behooves you as the team to not have him around your players. Like, what, in my opinion, personally, what good does it do to make Ramsey come show his face at mandatory minicamp to stand on the sideline and pout around or feel sorry for himself or talk smack on anybody on the roster because he doesn't want to be here and they're making him be here? There's a soiling of the well element with a disenfranchised player that I personally have no problem with the team saying, sit your butt at home until we figure out where you're going.
I think the well is already soiled. I think Tyreek Hill asking for new money every year. Now Jonnu Smith asking for new money. Jalen Ramsey, basically they're saying, hey, stay at home. We're going to trade you. Like, you could talk about the negative impact of having Jalen Ramsey in the building, but what about the negative impact of him not being in the building and him saying, oh, we're staying at home. We're not going to fine you. We're calling it an excused absence because we're trying to find you a trade. Like, I get the reality of the situation, but I'm sorry, the well is already poisoned. I think the Dolphins are done, and they're just in the end of their cycle right now, and we got to kill them off.
Yeah, at the time when they got Jalen Ramsey, it made sense to go out and get him, right? They were trying to, they're trying to get over the Buffalo Bills. They were trying to, have to fight against all these tough teams in the AFC, and they seem like they were close enough, right? But it doesn't seem like that anymore. They're always a 1-2, concussion away from their season being like completely over, right? And then also they're just not in the spot right now to compete in the AFC, or they could be the second best team in the AFC East, but what does that really matter? And Jalen Ramsey is not going to matter to you in terms of how far you're going to get in the playoffs or any of that. So trade him while you can. And same thing with Jonnu Smith. I don't really understand what's going on there. Like, if you target a guy 12 times a game, he's going to put up some production. It's his first year with over 600 yards. He averaged 10 yards per reception. You can find that anywhere. Like, just your offense was terrible when you had to use him that much. Move on from both these guys.
Yeah, the reason you had to use Jonnu Smith so much is because your offense was terrible and everyone was hurt. And the Dolphins have just never been a physical enough team to be a serious contender. They've had some flashy parts that were cool. Even, I would say, their head coach, Mike McDaniel, is a flashy, cool thing that isn't going to work out long term because what he was built on just isn't what truly wins at the end of the day in football. That's just my take on that. But I think we both agree here. The Dolphins, someone needs to pull the pillow out and just end it. They got to do it themselves. That's the only person that will save them. But Ramsey, speaking of, I think Jalen Ramsey needs to be a serious option for the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers, at their practice, now that they've cut Jair Alexander and they have some injuries in the secondary, they have one of their wide receivers, Bo Melton, out there running cornerback at mandatory minicamp. Now, look, I'm sure that they'll get healthier and all of that, but I'm not a big fan of their cornerback depth anyway. I think it's atrocious. You have Keshawn Nixon as your number one corner. I think that, you could look at Nate Hobbs and say that's a solid cornerback. Okay, great. Javon Bullard in the nickel, maybe. He's safety. Is he going to play corner? I love their safeties with Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams, and if you could include Javon Bullard in there. But, Micah Robinson banged up, Kalen King banged up. They don't have the numbers, and even when all their guys are healthy, I think it's a pretty bad group, bad enough to keep them from hitting their ceiling. If I'm the Packers, I would be the team going out there to get Jalen Ramsey.
They desperately need a corner. I get them having to move on from Jair Alexander just because of how many injuries they had, and it seems like maybe some locker room issues or whatever. But they need to add another corner because you just went through the cornerback room. It's kind of atrocious, right? It's very sketchy to say the least. And last year we saw this defense without Jair Alexander on the field, and it was not pretty. With him off the field, they allowed over a 70 completion percentage. With him on the field, it was 61%. So a massive difference with him on and off the field. And yeah, you had to move on because you don't even know if Jair Alexander, can stay healthy at all because he's been struggling, but they need to find someone else. And Jalen Ramsey seems to be available. So they should be calling up the Dolphins for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you there. Now, let me just say this though. Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, I think one of them might end up with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Something to keep an eye on there. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. As we tell you every single episode, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.